He told us that he can no longer make a living by selling these instruments, and that he will be forced to open a small grocery shop in the near future. I asked him how much one of his instruments would cost. A mere $100 for the fruit of 6 months of labor. Occasionally, musicians visit him to have their instruments repaired. Luckily for us, on that day, a few musicians showed up and gave us an improvised concert right there in the yard. The neighbours were very touched to see that people were still expressing an interest in Cote and his craft. One old lady was even happy to dance on this occasion. I may add here that this courtyard with the tree in the middle is very typical of this town. It was so pleasant to meet such unpretentious people who are so far from greed and material well-being, and who at the same time have not lost their good humor, kindness, and humility. I liked to watch their gestures, mannerisms, and spontaneous behavior. They reminded me at times of small children. Probably there is not much more I can say about these people. The music that they play will tell you much more than any words of mine. Normally, their affairs are led by a kind of manager. On this particular day, he was not around. Those present were more than happy to play the role of the boss in front of the camera and put on a little show for us. All of these musicians lead a very humble life. There are no luxuries for them. I remember a phrase that one of them told me once about going into a grocery shop as into a museum, because he simply cannot afford to buy any of the products in it. What more can I say about these people, who in such difficult times still have not abandoned their art when it is so hard to make a living? It is deeply saddening for me to realize that maybe in a decade or two from now, all that will be left of this music will be a few old recordings, and that to listen to a live performance may well no longer be possible. During the long, endless days, very rarely will you find them practicing or playing a piece of music. Most likely they will be found seated around the game table, where they spend most of their time involved in a lively game of dominoes or checkers. One of the most celebrated ashuks of all times was the Armenian poet Sayat Nova, who lived in Tbilisi in the 18th century. A poet of the court, he later became a monk who suffered a tragic death at the hands of Turkish invaders. In his poetry, along with the lyrical love themes, he talked about the love of freedom and matters of the human existence, often putting forth questions, but seldom answering them. His beautiful, expressive melodies captured the hearts of his listeners, and the words of his songs have continued to be on the lips of the people for many generations since. In this music, people of totally different backgrounds could find comfort, each finding in it an expression of his own being, be it feelings of joy or of sadness, of philosophical wonderings or of simple worldly happiness. A good friend of theirs had just returned from a brief visit to England. This called for a celebratory party. The music began to play, and the wine began to flow. They are perfectly happy with what little they have, and seem to enjoy themselves in this humble setting with their homemade wine, bread and onions. I love people of all nations equally, said the poet Etim Gurji. And indeed these people put into practice the words of the poet in their own way of life. Being among them, I could not sense any real difference between them. They played the same music, all talked in their own particular, almost incomprehensible manner, enjoyed the same jokes, and shared the same wine.